All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, in today's episode, we are talking a little bit more about simulated altitude training for mountaineers. And specifically, what we're diving into today is using an altitude chamber or an altitude mask when training for mountaineering. Now, before we go any further, I will be very clear from the get go. I am not a massive advocate for either of these things. Most of the claimed benefits around using an altitude chamber or a altitude mask, it doesn't really stack up with the evidence. A lot of the stuff that people say and market, it's marketing, but it's not particularly evidence-based. And if a mountaineer wanted to do simulated altitude training, they're going to be much better served by using an altitude tent and sleeping in a tent for hundreds of hours. And even then, there are a lot of question marks around that. And I've done a previous episode on that particular topic. But saying this, even though I'm not a massive advocate for it, I know there are a lot of mountaineers out there who want to use these things either way. Maybe they train at a gym and their gym has an altitude chamber and they're like, well, I want to use it. What should I be doing? Or maybe they already own one of these generator or mask setups and they're like, I kind of want to use it just because I have it. What should I be doing? Or maybe they're like, you know what? I live at sea level. I'm well aware that this isn't going to give the claimed benefits and it's not the magic thing under the sun, but maybe I just want some tiny improvements or little extra benefits. So I want to use it. So what should I do? So today we're going to be talking through it in that context, not because I'm a massive advocate for this type of training, but just for people who are really wanting to do this, how to, get the best benefits out of this type of training. So what we're going to be covering today, pretty straightforward. We're going to just briefly cover what an altitude chamber does. We're going to talk about what altitude chambers and masks are good for and what they're not so good for when it comes to training for mountaineering. I'm going to talk through 4 workout structures which can be quite useful in certain contexts in altitude chambers, and also a few extra considerations if you are going to be doing this type of training. So to start with, let's get into what an altitude chamber or mask does. A simulated altitude chamber, very simple. Essentially, you go into a sealed room. What happens in the room is nitrogen is pumped into the room, and that changes the percentage of oxygen that you breathe in. What happens when you breathe in this reduced oxygen? It decreases your blood oxygen saturation, which is similar to what happens at natural high altitude. The idea behind this is you're in this hypoxic environment with this lower blood oxygen saturation. That's supposed to trigger certain adaptations to improve us and help us feel a bit better. Altitude masks, pretty much the same thing, but instead of you being in a big chamber, essentially you've got a generator next to you and a mask which is attached to that, and that does the same thing. Altitude masks, what we're talking about today, are not those elevation masks, which just restrict your breathing, because that's a whole different story, but it's essentially something that's attached to a generator. Now, to be clear, these things have been around forever. You'll see more and more gyms popped up. But to be very clear, one thing that we need to be super crystal clear on is simulated altitude gyms or masks. The things that you can get commercially available, they are not exactly the same thing as natural altitude. When you go to natural altitude, so you go up on the mountain, the percentage of oxygen in the air stays the same. What changes is the air pressure. When we're in these simulated altitude environments, the air pressure stays the same, but we reduce the oxygen. That may get a similar end result in regards to the changes in blood oxygen saturation, but they cannot be considered the same thing. There are similarities, but it's not the same thing. There is a type of simulated altitude training which does do this, gets much closer to natural altitude where the air pressure does change, and this is called hyperbaric altitude training. But this is not really what's available to regular people. This is available to pilots or military or whatever it may be. If you go down your local gym and there's an altitude chamber there, or if you go online and you buy a mask or whatever it may be, this is known as normobaric altitude training. So it's not the same thing as natural altitude, and that has to be very crystal clear. So with that being said, what are altitude chambers and masks good for, and what are they not good for? Now, if you go down to your local altitude gym and you have a chat with one of the coaches there, or if you go on a website, or if you talk to a company which sells masks, you'll probably get told all these amazing things that these things will do for you. And people will sort of say, hey, this will reduce your risk of altitude sickness, or this will pre-acclimatize you, or this will increase your red blood cells or your hemoglobin, or whatever it may be. In all honesty, a lot of this really, 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 really isn't true. And there's a lot of misconception and misinformation around this topic. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because I don't want to harp on this subject too long and turn into a marathon episode. But very, very briefly, what altitude chambers won't do for a mountaineer. Number one, a simulated altitude chamber will not reduce your risk of altitude sickness. To be very, very, very clear about that. People will often say, hey, there are these studies proving this. But the studies in this context are very misleading because these studies will either look at people training in a hyperbaric altitude chamber and going up to high altitude, and there is some evidence to say that may be beneficial for altitude sickness, or the other studies that are often quoted is essentially they train in a normobaric altitude chamber and they compare rates of altitude sickness when they test again in that normobaric altitude chamber. So they never go up in the mountain. They never test real altitude sickness. They just test it in these chambers. But these studies are often kind of used as evidence and proof when they're very, very misleading. So first of all, it will not reduce your risk of altitude sickness. Number two, it's not going to pre-acclimatize you. Spending a couple of hours a week in an altitude chamber, it's not going to pre-acclimatize you. And number three, it's not going to increase, or most likely is not going to increase significantly, your red blood cells or your hemoglobin. There is some evidence to show that being in one of these normobaric environments can improve hemoglobin to an extent. However, to get this reliably, you have to spend hundreds of hours in this environment, a minimum of 250 hours, which happens not by training in a chamber because you're never going to spend that much time unless you live in the chamber. It happens when you're sleeping in a tent and you're accumulating 7-8 hours a night in a tent. So as much as these things are often said, you'll get from going in an altitude gym and you can train 3 times a week for 30 minutes in a gym and this will all happen. Yeah, probably not. What altitude gyms can be good for in the mountaineering context is number one, there can be some changes in your ventilatory responses in regards to how your breathing works, what your breathing does. When we go up to altitude, our breathing gets challenged. Different changes happen in that. This can happen in a normobaric environment. That can be beneficial. It's not the be-all, end-all. It will happen when you're up at terrestrial altitude anyway, but it can be good. Probably the main benefit beyond physical on the breathing side, the main benefit of this type of thing is more on the mental side of things. In the sense, a lot of people will go up on the mountain. They'll get that shortness of breath. They'll get that huffing and puffing, and they'll feel a bit uncomfortable. Some people will feel uncomfortable and they're like, okay, this is kind of all right. I'll kind of deal with it. Other people will start getting a bit anxious. They'll start getting a bit worried. They'll start thinking about it. And the tricky thing about breathing is it responds to our emotions. And we get anxious or we get worked up, we'll get quicker breathing. And then we'll start thinking about it more. And that'll cause our breathing to get quicker. And it just builds and builds and builds into like a panic response. A lot of people deal with this and it's not much fun. One of the best benefits of this type of environment for a mountaineer is if you can get into an altitude chamber, if you can do some training, expose the body to and your mind to that type of feeling where you're short of breath, it's hard to recover, and challenge that, you can just basically do exposure therapy, where you teach your body that this isn't a big deal. I can recover from this. I can get more efficient dealing with this, and it can blunt that panic response. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of this type of thing when it comes down to chambers, in my personal opinion. And then number three, you can get some good improvements or some potential good improvements in regards to endurance performance. So improving your ability to perform endurance exercise. Now, when we're looking at this, it's not so much saying, okay, training in this environment, it will specifically prepare us for endurance at altitude, because again, it's a little bit different. But kind of what we're chasing here is it will potentially help us perform better at our sea level training and just in general improve our endurance, because more endurance is always going to be better on the mountain. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Take away the hype from this type of training. It probably isn't going to give that well-marketed stuff for you. It's probably not going to make a massive difference to altitude sickness, acclimatization, to your bloods. But there are some smaller benefits which, if you're in that environment, they're not bad. And we can kind of say, yeah, that would be pretty good. So with that being said, if you are in this situation and you want to use it, how can a mountaineer use simulated altitude training? I will reiterate again, because this doesn't really line up with the claimed benefits, I personally think most mountaineers should just go out and nail sea level training. If you have access to get to natural altitude in your training, great, do it. But just nail your sea level training. Do a proper program. Make sure you have a proper climatization schedule and all of that. But as I said before, a lot of mountaineers anyway, they want to do this type of training. They might have that mask or generator. They may have access to a gym, or they may just want those small improvements. Or maybe they've had a really bad experience at altitude before, and they maybe want to practice that breathing and feel a bit more comfortable. In that situation, let's talk through a few ideas. Now, first of all, before we even get into workouts, let's just be clear on what type of exercise you should be doing in an altitude chamber. Because some gyms, they like to say that you should be doing strength training in altitude chambers. And there's some studies which show that it'll improve your strength. In all honesty, the studies are very, very poor. If you're doing strength training, just do it in a normal environment. That's not what altitude training is for. Altitude chambers are for cardio, doing your aerobic workouts or your cardio workouts in one way or another. So to be clear on that front. So with that being said, I'm going to talk you through 4 potential workouts you can use in this environment. Now, first off, this is the first place every single person should start when you're doing this. And this is essentially just doing long, steady state, low intensity sessions. It can be tempting for people to kind of jump into high intensity stuff. It can be tempting for people to jump into intervals or whatever may be. But every single person who's starting in one of these gyms, just start with long, steady state stuff. Get on the treadmill, do some walking. Get on a bike, turn your legs over. Do a stepper or anything, just low intensity. Take whatever time you have, whatever minutes you have available in that chamber, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you paid for, and just accumulate that time spent moving. Get your pulse oximeter, which kind of measures your blood oxygen saturation, and aim between about 80 to 85%. That's kind of what they often say like is the sweet spot for this. In the sense, if we're sitting 80 to 85% oxygen saturation, that tends to be enough to kind of stimulate is the right word, the adaptations that we want. If we're getting lower than that, it's probably not particularly majorly more beneficial, but it does increase the risk of you kind of getting dizzy and lightheaded and that. So 80-85%. So just do whatever you need to do at that. If you're the type of person you get in that environment and you just start moving and it drops really quickly and you're like, oh, this is a struggle, then this may literally just be sitting on a bike, just turning your legs over or just walking at a really slow pace. Some people will just sit there. If they're very, very likely to respond very quickly, that's fine. Other people, depending on how you go, this may involve some incline walking, popping on the treadmill on an incline, or some moderate cycling, or some gentle stepping. Just use that as a guide initially. Just cruise along, literally just accumulate the minutes. Do this for your first training phase. For the first 4, 5, 6 weeks in this environment, that's all you really need to do. Each session you go in, just get that time. It's a bit boring, but it's probably the best use of your time initially. Now, once that's done, once you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with that, you've done maybe 4 weeks of this and you're like, cool, I kind of got to hang with it. I realize how the body responds to it. Like I'm not getting dizzy. I'm confident, all of this. Then we can kind of start playing around with some different stuff. One thing that I think can be really, really, really beneficial in this environment is practicing breathing control. Because as I said previously, one of the best benefits of this for a mountaineer is just getting that mental exposure to that breathing. And just be like, oh, yeah, that's uncomfortable. And then actually practicing manipulating that breathing with your body. So workout I quite like in this environment. And I like this at sea level as well. But basically what you do is you get on a treadmill, like an incline treadmill or a stepper. Or if neither of those are there, and they should be there, or if it's just busy, maybe do like box step-ups or whatever it may be. Essentially what you're going to do is you're just going to move slowly for 3 minutes. Climb in the incline, on the stepper, on the box steps. Just do slow, steady, controlled breathing. Aiming as you're moving for these 3 minutes, aiming on just really good breathing mechanics. Focusing on diaphragmatic breathing, breathing into the belly, feel that expand, as opposed to chest and shoulders being too much. If you can do it, maybe aim for nose breathing. If that's not accessible, don't worry. But 3 minutes, really steady, really controlled. Then for the next 3 minutes, you're going to push the pace a little bit. It's not a sprint, but you're just going to push to the point where you get a bit out of breath and you feel like that breathing's quicker. And you're literally just going to sustain that for 3 minutes. It doesn't have to get you gasping for air. It's not maximal. It's not super high intensity, but it's just a bit where it's like, that's a bit quicker. I'm huffing and puffing in between words or whatever it may be. 3 minutes of that. After the 3 minutes, then you're going to pull the speed back really, really, really significantly. You're going to basically pull it back till maybe you're just even barely moving. And what we're going to concentrate on is just bringing your breathing back down under control, getting back down to that diaphragmatic breathing, getting back down to that controlled breathing, potentially getting back down to that nose breathing. Get that down as quick as you can and then sustain that for the rest of the 3 minutes. Then go back to the quicker for 3 minutes, ramp it up, get the breathing high, pull it back down. 3 minutes slow, 3 minutes quick, just manipulating that breathing. Then each week you do this, you can either go a little bit quicker in these quicker intervals or maybe add an extra interval of doing it. Now, the reason I quite like this workout is it does have a number of benefits and a number of things we're kind of aiming for. Now, beyond just getting a nice training stimulus, so just moving in that environment and doing some sustained climbing, whatever it may be, specifically on breathing, the first benefit of this is it helps you practice controlled climbing. A lot of people really, really, really struggle with pacing when they are ascending, of just literally going up a steep ascent and actually going at a pace where their heart rate doesn't jack out of control or their breathing doesn't just get out of control. A lot of people struggle with that, even at sea level. So practicing this at sea level or in the simulated environment is really, really beneficial. Just getting that good, steady pacing when the breathing's a little bit harder, the air isn't quite there. It's a really, really, really useful thing to practice. The second thing is this is going to expose you to just sustaining a higher effort for multiple minutes at a time. This is really beneficial for just getting you comfortable with that. So you can kind of get out of breath and you're like, this isn't the end of the world. Like, this is kind of okay. I can sort of sit here. It's all right. And also fitness adaptations of just sustaining this slightly higher intensity for multiple minutes can be pretty good. And then third, the other thing is just basically bringing your breathing and practicing bringing your breathing back down under control while moving. So you can do all of those things separately. You can do the controlled climbing separately. You can do the quicker sustained efforts separately. But then you put it together and then all of a sudden you get to that end of that quicker workout, quicker interval, and you've really got to practice bringing the breathing down while you are moving. Because a lot of people will kind of get to that point with their breathing and they're like, I just need to stop. I can't go any further. I need to stop, catch my breath. But obviously we don't always have that opportunity on the mountain. So actually practicing pulling the pacing back, getting the breathing down while we are still moving, very, very useful. This in itself can be hard enough at sea level. But when we're doing this in simulated environment where it's hard to catch your breath, it can be even harder, but mentally, physically, potentially have some more benefits. So that can be really, really good. And that's probably, in all honesty, like my favorite workout in this type of environment. And you can manipulate this in lots of ways. You can do longer intervals, you can do whatever it may be, but this can be really good, just practicing that type of thing. All right, workout number 3. Now, this one is when we're bumping up the intervals a little bit more. So we're going from that kind of more lower intensity, moderate intensity, to kind of getting that like moderate higher intensity. So once you get the hang of breathing control, if you do want to progress this, we can bump this up into some slightly tougher interval training where we do push the intensity a bit more. Now, to be clear, it's kind of 50-50 whether you want to do this or not. Some people really like doing this type of thing in this environment. Some people do this and they're like, you know what? Nah, this isn't for me. I get a little bit spacey, a bit dizzy. Maybe I feel like, I could just do this workout at sea level and just work way harder and I feel like much better. So it's kind of 50-50 whether you apply this or not. If you did want to if you did get dizzy or you're like, hey, I just like working hard at sea level, just ignore this. Just do the breathing control, the steady state stuff. That will give you the benefits you want. But if you did want to explore this and bump up the intensity a little bit, very, very simple. In this particular workout structure, you're going to get on a bike, a step up, maybe even running on the treadmill if you're happy with running. What you're going to do, you're going to go quick for 3 minutes, pushing the pace quite a bit. You're going to rest for 90 seconds, repeat that 7 to 10 times. Now, this particular workout, it is a higher intensity workout than what we did before. So you're going to be pushing the speed a bit more, getting a bit more out of breath, getting a bit more out of comfortable. So those 90 seconds rest, you kind of want to stop. You kind of need that rest. It's not moving and controlling your breathing, but it's just like, I need that time to recover. Very, very simple. You've often probably heard me talk about that interval structure a lot because I love it for mountaineers, and I think it can be a good thing if you're looking at introducing a bit more intensity in this environment, can be quite good. And then with this, if you were doing it each week, you would just go a bit quicker or add an extra interval. As I said, it's like 50-50 whether you want to apply that or not in that environment. You can give it a go, see what you think. You'll get great benefits doing that at sea level anyway, so see how you go. And then the final workout are repeated sprints. Now, this is a workout structure. It does have a lot of study behind it. But in all honesty, the main benefits of this particular workout structure are for those who are people who are doing more higher intensity sports, like team sports, or for endurance athletes who have to maintain a higher pace, like they're literally racing, or whatever it may be. This isn't really ever going to be a priority for mountaineers. I would sort of say 9 out of 10 mountaineers training in an altitude chamber don't need to do this. But in the small, rare situation, it can be good for the mental side of things. In the sense, if you've been working through all this and you still kind of got that voice in your head going, I'm really, really worried about my breathing up there. I'm really, really, really worried about that. And it's stressing me out or whatever it may be. This may be beneficial. And if we want to get exposure and practice exposure to being really uncomfortable, this can be good. Essentially what this is a repeated sprint workout. What we're doing here, very, very, very high intensity, short, sharp sprints with not complete rest. So it's not full rest where you're fully recovered and ready to go. It's not super, super little rest where you're like, oh my gosh, can't believe I have to go again. But it's kind of incomplete rest where you're like, I'm a bit recovered, but I could do a bit more time. Essentially, what we're wanting to do here is just get really, really, really out of breath. We just want to be gasping for air, feeling a bit gross. And then we just want to have a bit of recovery time and just practice bringing it back down. And then go again, bring the breathing back down and challenge ourselves here. Now, there is a lot of variation in regards to ways people approach this type of training. As I said, there's a lot of kind of research behind this stuff in different contexts. And there's a lot of different interval structures and protocols which have been studied. In all honesty, considering you as a mountaineer, you're not chasing the same adaptations that you get that the team sport people are playing, the rugby players are playing, the hockey players or whatever it is. You're not chasing those particular adaptations. We have a bit more flexibility because realistically, all we are trying to do in this is just to get exposure to really, really, really uncomfortable breathing and just practice that physically and mentally. So we have a lot of flexibility here. Basically, all you're going to be doing is choosing an interval where you can go really quick and you can basically just get the breathing jacked up and uncomfortable. That's it. And then having a rest period where you get enough recovery to kind of go again, but just not quite enough as you really feel like you need. So we're just incomplete recovery to go again. So an example of this might be you do a 20-second sprint. You get on a bike, you smash it for 20 seconds, jack up that intensity, and then we have a 90-second rest. Now, in that 90 seconds, you'll probably spend the first 60 seconds or so like, oh my gosh, this sucks, and just really, really trying to pull your breathing down. The next 30 seconds or so, you're like, okay, it's kind of getting there. And you get to that 90-second mark, and you're like, well, I'm maybe like 80% recovered or something like that. It's that incomplete recovery. And then in this example, you may do this for 4 weeks and then just cut down 10 seconds from rest each week. So week 1, you might do 20-second sprint, 90-second rest. Week 2, you might do 20-second sprint, 80-second rest, so forth. Or something like that. There's a million and one ways you could do about it. Now, whatever you choose, this is only small doses. You don't have to do like 60 minutes of this. No one could survive 60 minutes of this. You literally might do 5 sets of this or 10 sets at most. And just spend the rest of the session on lower intensity stuff. So you may roll into a 60-minute session in the chamber. You may warm up, do 5, 6, 7 minutes of this, and then the rest of the session just do slow, steady state stuff. Or the flip side, you could do your entire session for slow, steady state stuff and then do the last 5 minutes of this and then walk out, whatever it is. Now, with this stuff, because it is super high intensity in a very gross environment, you do need to be quite intentional around this. Because of all the workouts, these are the ones that are going to make you feel a bit gross and dizzy. If you're sprinting, you're probably not really going to be measuring your blood oxygen so much. It probably is going to drop a little bit lower than that 80%. And getting lower than that is a bit of like a yellow flag. So a few considerations for this. If you have been getting dizzy or uncomfortable or getting panicky in any of the previous workouts, don't do this. It's not for you. On top of that, if you're doing this, only do it on something that you just don't have a chance of falling off. So don't do it on a Stairmaster where you're like, if you got a little bit dizzy on that, you tumble off. Not great. Don't do it on the treadmill with the moving belt. Not great. I would sort of say only really do this on a stationary bike. Just be smart about this. As I said, 9 out of 10 mountaineers doing altitude training in a chamber probably don't need this, but it can be an option. So with that being said, there are 4 simple workout structures. None of that's too complicated, but in all honesty, you don't have to get too complicated with this stuff. It really comes down to just spending time in there and then practicing some key things, practicing that breathing control or whatever it may be. I think that's your best use of time. Now, a few extra bits and pieces I just want to cover before I wrap things up. A few best practices of using these altitude chambers or altitude masks. These are kind of best practices for any type of training, but it gets even more important when we're looking at simulated altitude training. Number 1, make sure you enter your sessions hydrated. Don't mess around with dehydration. Make sure you are hydrated. 60 minutes before you train, go to the toilet, look at your urine color. If you're straw to clear colored or clear to straw colored, you're good to go. If it's darker than that, drink a bit of water. Number 2, enter your sessions fueled. Have some carbohydrates in your system. You're going to be burning a lot of energy in that environment. You're going to be using more carbs in that environment. Make sure you are fueled. If you've got time, have a decent meal 2 hours beforehand or something like that. If you don't have time, just have something short, quick, and easy to digest before you train. A sports drink, some dried fruit, whatever it may be. If you're doing long sessions, maybe you're spending multiple hours in there, replenish your food. Get some extra carbs in at the 90-minute mark or whatever it may be. Have some snacks in it, whatever it is. If you are sick, if you're carrying a cold, if you're coming off the back of a flu, if you're still in recovery from anything else, don't do this. Simulated altitude training does put more stress on the body, does put more stress on the immune system. If you're sick, don't do it. Do your training, do some light recovery stuff at sea level, that's fine. And also on top of this, if you're following a training program and you start applying simulated altitude training and you realize my energy has just gone rock bottom, I'm not recovering, I'm sore or whatever it may be, you've got 2 options. Number 1, you either need to reduce your intensity of what you're doing in this altitude training, so it's not impacting the rest of your training. Or if that's still happening, you're just doing those gentle, steady state things and you're still knackered, then maybe avoid this or you have to adjust your training. Don't let this compromise your other training. Don't let this compromise your recovery because it will impact things if you're not careful. So just to sum things up, when it comes down to using altitude chambers, altitude masks, I am personally not a big advocate for them for mountaineers. They definitely do not live up to the hype of marketing, and they only bring some very small benefits to mountaineers. And rarely would I say they're worth the money to invest in or the effort or whatever it may be. However, if you do want to do this, all power to you. Hopefully this gives you a few ideas, a little bit of direction, and hopefully it can help you get a little bit more out of this type of training. Now, last thing I will sort of say is if you are a mountaineer and you are preparing for a big altitude adventure and you're curious about what you should be doing to give yourself the best chance of a successful adventure and prepare your body physically and mentally for that. And if you want to find out a little bit more about what we do and how we help mountaineers, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/mountaineer. On that page, there's a big video, talks a lot about the programs we offer. And if it sounds like something you want to explore a little bit more, you can go to if it sounds like something you want to explore a little bit more, there's a link on that page where you can book a call with our team and we can have a bit of a chat. So with that being said, thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got a little bit out of it. And we'll talk to you very soon.